Thank you, Mick Schumacher, for giving us the moment we all never thought would come. Hulkenberg getting a podium. But how does this relate to Mick Schumacher, I hear you say? Well, let me take you back to 2020. The date is March 1st, 2020, and pre-season testing for F2 has just got underway. In the Premier team, Mick Schumacher has spent the previous year learning the ropes of F2 and even picked up his first win halfway through the year in Hungary. But as was common in Mick's junior career, he would normally take a year to adjust to a championship before winning it the following season, and the 2020 F2 season was no different. He shared a close battle with fellow Ferrari Academy driver Callum Ilott and came out victorious in the final race at Bahrain, thus earning a seat with Haas for the 2021 season. Once again, Mick would get a full year out of the spotlight in F1 as he would be racing for the Haas team that were essentially tanking in order to prioritise their 2022 car. Perfect time to learn the ropes and go into 2022 more ready than before. And when his egghead teammate got his contract ripped up in February 2022, he would then be up against Kevin Magnussen, fresh off the back of a one-year break from F1. All signs are leading in the right direction for Mick. Now time to score some points.
Kevin Magnussen, welcome back to Formula One. He's fifth.
It's checkered flag, Mick, checkered flag. So you ended P11.
Well, that's not a great start. No biggie, there's 21 more races to shine. Next up is Saudi Arabia, and all Mick has to do is keep it clean.
Oh, Otmar! We'll just leave it there.
Well shit. Mick would be forced to sit out of the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix after this massive shunt, and so we moved to round 3 in Australia. He wouldn't do much, but crucially, he would beat Magnussen for the first time, albeit he was in 13th place. In Imola, he would finish out the points again as Magnussen scored in both the sprint and the race, and it didn't get much better in Miami. While running in the points, he would dive bomb his stepdad Sebastian Vettel and send both of them down the order. In Spain, both he and Magnussen would make Q3 with K-Mag 8th and Mick 10th, but in the race, Magnussen would be hit off by Hamilton on lap 1, with Mick suffering from pace problems and finishing 14th. Then it was Monaco. He'd had a pretty decent crash the year before, and he topped it off this year by splitting his car in half. Another $1 million down the drain for the struggling Haas team. But it's all good because next race is Baku. He finished 14th. In Canada, he qualified well in P6 but retired with an engine issue on lap 18 while running in 8th. But in Britain, finally his luck would change. He would fight with a damaged Verstappen throughout and finally finished in the points with 8th place. He would follow this up with a great drive in the Austria sprint, narrowly missing out on points before grabbing 6th in the race on Sunday. Mick had arrived, and so he followed these great string of results up with a 15th at Paul Ricard, but to be fair he got spun by Zhou there. Then it would be 14th at Hungary, 17th at Spa, 13th at Zandvoort, 12th in Monza, and then a 13th in Singapore where he turned into Russell on the straight. Then came Japan. After a string of pretty mid results where he'd scored 0 points to Magnussen's 0, he did the unspeakable. He wrote off another chassis, this time at the end of FP1, so it didn't even matter. This was the straw that broke the camel's back, and after his third high-profile shunt of the season, Gunter wanted him out. The young driver project had failed miserably, and Haas needed results, and they needed them now. That's when Nico Hulkenberg entered the picture. He had last raced full-time in 2019, but after being dropped by Renault, he was forced into a reserve driver role at Racing Point, where he would impress in his 3 race weekends where he qualified 3rd and finished 7th in Silverstone, and went from 20th to 8th at the Nürburgring last minute. He had clearly not lost any of his pace that had made him a household name in the midfield for almost a decade. But one thing was definitely against him: his age. Hulk was 35 and not getting any younger. But the thing is, drivers like him don't come around often. So when he subbed in for Vettel at the start of 2022 and beat Stroll in both races, Haas knew they had their guy and promptly signed Hulkenberg to race in the 2023 season. Mick was given until the end of the season to prove himself, but ultimately didn't, as he was left with just 14 points to show for his pretty average F1 career. Now Haas would have a very dependable lineup consisting of 2 drivers with over 10 years of experience in the sport, and in return, Haas built a car that couldn't hold onto its tyres. The car was mighty in qualifying but would fall off during the race, as shown by Hulkenberg qualifying 2nd in Canada, dropping to 5th after a penalty was applied and falling to 15th at the checkered flag. 2023 would see Hulk only score points twice, but just looking at the results of Wikipedia doesn't tell the full story. He was a mainstay in Q3 and drove the majority of the Austria sprint in the podium places before falling out thanks to changing conditions and once again the Haas car's tyre management. Haas would finish 2023 bottom of the constructors, but their lineup had been a success. They had crashed a lot less, and more importantly to this story, Hulkenberg had proven he deserved to be on the grid. So it came as no surprise when in 2024 Haas built a decent car, and what do you know, Hulkenberg drove it well. He'd score points in 3 of the first 5 rounds with an 11th in there as well. Halfway through the year, in between various 11th places, he'd get consecutive 6th place finishes in Silverstone and Austria, and ended the season by scoring in 6 of the last 7 rounds, helping Haas finish 7th in the Constructors, just behind Alpine, who had scored a double podium in Brazil. It's fair to say Hulkenberg was still a fine driver and seemed to be aging like wine as well. And that's why it came to no one's surprise when Audi took the chance to have a German lead their team in F1 and signed Hulkenberg to a contract for 2025 and 26. That would mean he would have to drive the Kick Sauber tractor in 2025, but at least he was going to be the leader of the Audi project. So 2025 for Sauber, where are they at? After a pretty terrible year in 2024, they showed up in round 1 at Australia with another tractor. Another wasted Nico year. He managed to finish P7 on debut, but that was definitely helped by everyone around him crashing out. But hey, to finish first you need to finish, and Hulkenberg was doing a good job of finishing in these tough races. This would be the highlight of the first third of the season as Sauber struggled at the back. But then came Spain. They brought some upgrades to Catalonia and they worked as Nico went from 15th on the grid to P5 after Verstappen was given a 10-second penalty. He'd then score P8 in Canada before the team's first double points of the season came in Austria, when Nico came from 20th on the grid to 9th at the checkered flag, just behind teammate Bortoleto. Sauber had fixed their issues and they were back in the midfield. And that takes us into Silverstone.
We meet again at Silverstone.
With every team apart from Alpine bringing upgrades to Silverstone, it really wasn't a surprise when Q1 was finished and Bortoleto was 18th with Hulkenberg 20th. He would be bumped up to 19th on Sunday thanks to Colapinto, and it was a wet start. While some pitted for slicks at the start, including Nico's teammate, he elected to stay out on the Inters. He would move up to P5 during the early stages of the race as cars pitted around him, with Hulkenberg braving out the conditions. Through the various safety cars that came out due to incidents or because it was way too wet, Hulkenberg would keep it on track through it all. But when Hadjar hit Antonelli and retired from the race, the ensuing safety car restart would wipe out Verstappen from the running as he spun. This left Hulkenberg 4th, only behind Stroll in P3. As the McLarens cruised into the distance, Hulkenberg stayed close to Stroll. Once the track had cleared enough, DRS would eventually be enabled, and when that time came, Stroll's tyres were gone and Hulkenberg sailed past into the podium places. While he'd been sitting behind Stroll biding his time, Gasly had been bottlenecking the rest of the top 10 and had been doing a pretty good job of holding up George Russell and Lewis Hamilton. But eventually, Hamilton broke through, overtook Gasly, and then got past Stroll, meaning he would now be chasing Hulkenberg. The Ferraris weren't great this weekend, but they were better than the Sauber, and it looked like only a matter of time before Hamilton would pass Hulkenberg and we'd be seeing another missed podium. But miraculously, after a few attacks by Hamilton, Hulkenberg started to pull away. When the track was much drier and the grid transitioned to slicks, Hamilton came in first onto the softs, with Hulkenberg coming in the next lap for the mediums. It was a tough outlap and Hamilton had the warm tyres, but crucially, Lewis had had a very hard time on his outlap and the gap was now around 6 seconds. It ebbed and flowed for the next 10 laps, but as the laps ticked down, Hulkenberg wasn't budging and he was even putting some distance between himself and Hamilton. As Norris crossed the line to win the British Grand Prix, Hulkenberg was over 30 seconds behind, but crucially still in P3 and getting closer to that elusive podium that he'd spent the last 15 years chasing.
He locks up. Hulkenberg might just go through here. And back up into the lead. No, they've touched. And Hamilton and Hulkenberg come together.
Oh, that's just wretched luck for Hulkenberg.
Yeah, he had fine pace, didn't he? It looked like he was on for a podium.
Look, there is the Renault of Nico Hulkenberg, and he's ending his home Grand Prix in the barriers.
A phenomenal run he's having. He would so have deserved to finally maybe have a chance even for the podium.
No one has ever waited as long to stand on a Formula One podium. Get rid of that stat and celebrate Nico Hulkenberg. 239 starts and a podium finisher in Formula One at long, long last.